Coronavirus is going to blow up the world. Okay, cool. Okay, I trust.
How do you prepare for that?
You don't. When you have a level of faith, explanation's not required.
Just surrender to it.
It's just a pure understanding that that's how it's supposed to be. From the moment it happened, I was like, this is divine. I have faith. And I just feel like, for me personally, and I'm seeing this around me, you get to a point in your life where you get enough momentum in faith, you just fucking trust. How do you know the experience you're having right now is the one that is for the greatest potential of your evolution? Because it's the one you're experiencing this moment. Eckhart Tolle, Morpheus, Peter Crone.
What happened happened and couldn't have happened any other way.
How do you know?
Because it didn't.
It's not a question of the event, it's a question of our own faith.
As a pre-installed way of looking at life, we're under the impression that things shouldn't be the way they are. And, that's a human perspective on top of a Mother Nature way of reality.
And so, your son should lash out at you. Why? Number one is because that's what's happening, which means that's reality.
One of my quotes is, I have an intimate relationship with reality. Oh, I love that.
And Byron Katie says you can argue with reality, but you will be wrong only 100% of the time.
All our suffering comes from an attachment to a belief that life should be that way. So when life isn't that way, we experience great suffering.
So you make your peace with it. And we all can do that for all of the things that are happening. Coronavirus, it's reality. You want to argue with it? You're wrong. It doesn't mean you have to be at the effect of it.
The wisdom of the mystics says, accept what is.
Yeah.
And when you accept what is, you flow through life.
In fighting, you go in the ring believing that you'll win, but you have to make peace with the fact that you can't control the outcome. So you activate all the power that you have, but you try not to be arrogant enough to think that you can control it, because anything can happen.
You are going to suffer if you don't want things to be the way they are. It's physics.
Because who's seeing things drop into place? Well, you call a pandemic dropping into place? Yeah.
Wisdom is the instantaneous recognition that crisis has blessing, and the two sides are always present because they're entangled. Every event, even though it seems to be one-sided, always has its opposite pole to balance it.
They just told me that my wife had been in an accident, and the guy's voice was shaky on the phone, So I was just like, fuck, no. Just let her be alive. Just let her be alive. Looking back at it now, I knew her soul had gone. And on the way to the side, I remember I was walking. I get to the side and I look at it and I'm like, man, there was no way this was a mistake. I was like, this was always going to happen. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, fuck, why me? And then I thought, fuck, who else? Who else has got enough to get through this? Who can emotionally navigate themselves through this better than me? And I was like, acceptance, 100%. That was in 3 days, 4 days. I accepted it. And that's a massive part of the healing, massive part.
So if you're okay with the way things are, then you reconcile suffering.
And that which we resist gets stronger.
Yes.
What happens is grief is a perception of loss of that which you're infatuated with. So when people talk about their grief, they will always make a list of the things that they admired about the person that they miss. They will never tell you the things they despised that they miss. Because you don't have grief over the loss of things you despise, you have relief.
So like for me, sexually abused twice by 8th grade by guys. That rocked me. But when I figured it out in the military, it ain't no big thing. Let it go. Unless you want to make it a big thing. Get over it. Release it. Forget it. It's experience. Chalk it up. Move on. Then all of a sudden, you can sort of wrestle with the pain and the hurt, the unforgiveness and stuff. Think it through. You breathe. You think, this is not going to take over my life and change me in the wrong direction. Matter of fact, we say, God wants to take your misery and turn it into ministry. That the stuff that has hurt you the most should be the stuff that you work through and that you can help other people with.
And share it.
And the second most important reason why your son should lash out at you is because it takes you into your wound. And when you're in your wound, you get an opportunity to heal it. If you never get into it, you never get to heal it. And so it's his job. So every time he freaks his shit on you, you be like, I'm so grateful to you. Thank you for this gift that I get to grow myself. Right?
Yeah.
Again, what has the world had a lot of in the last couple of years? We've had a lot of fucking pain. Okay, we've had wars, we've had fires, we've had floods, and now we've got a fucking pandemic. What is all of that? Pain. Do you know what the consequence of that pain is? Awakening.
Too many people make that pain or whatever happens to them identify them, and they sit in it and they're like, hey, I'm a widow, right?
It becomes their story.
Nah.
You know, why are you doing this to yourself? Because you want to control the unpredictable nature of life, you know, and releasing that is scary for people.
We're not victims of life, we're beneficiaries to it. So it's a reframe, it's being able to adjust our perspective in a way that allows us to recognize, even through adversity, that I'm becoming a bigger and better version of myself.
If it were not for having a child who's had fairly significant challenges along the way, and if it were not for having my head smashed against the brick wall of my failed marriage, I wouldn't have done my work. I wouldn't have had that path open to me.
It is precisely what was supposed to happen. Why? Because it's what happened.
I've gotten to some stage where it's fucking crazy that I've thought to myself, I'm actually sometimes grateful what happened.
It may take 3, 6, 9, 12 months, but when things sort of fall into place as they're intended to be, they can look back in hindsight and go, oh wow, me getting laid off, even though at the time it was a struggle, is actually a blessing now and one of the best things that ever happened to me.
The greater the perspective, the more things make sense. When you look at things in isolation, very rarely does anything make sense.
I would really invite people to develop a quality of trust that in ways that perhaps they don't understand, the circumstances of their life are aligning for their benefit.
Too often people get caught in this world where you're just looking at what's coming out of your eyes. There's a lot more. And once you discover that, everything's easy.
At first, we blame others. Then as we evolve a little further, we start blaming ourselves. And then when we finally become awake and we realize there's nothing to blame.
Whatever happened 5 seconds ago, 5 decades ago, is precisely what was supposed to happen. Why? Because it's what happened.